Good morning, everyone. It's 11:30. Thank you for coming to our joint meeting of the Commissioners and the Council. If you would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are called to order, and now we need to confirm the quorum for each of the commissioners and the council. And it appears to me that we have all 7 council and all 3 commissioners here today. So our next item is to approve the minutes of our February 18th, 2025 joint meeting. And I guess probably need to do that. Do it and then council. Okay. So if the commissioners would like to start.
Also moved.
Second.
Then moved and seconded to approve the minutes of February 18th on the commissioner's side. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Go ahead. We have an extra commissioner.
We do.
Is there a motion from the council?
I'll move that, since I spoke so early.
Mr. Parsons, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hudson. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain. So ours is 601. Because Mr. Wyatt was not here in February. The next item on our agenda is legislative impact. And do you have any comments you want to start with?
Sure. I'll begin. We're, living in Hendricks County, we are fortunate to have several legislators, obviously, that are elected and live in our county and so on, but we are privileged to have someone like Jeff Thompson, our state rep, Thompson, that is chairman of Ways and Means, which he wouldn't say this, but I will. He's probably one of the most powerful legislators in the state of Indiana, and the chairman of that committee. So Jeff, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it, and we'll try to treat you well and as easy as we can today. We had another legislator with us earlier, and he didn't want to stay. So he said his son was going to represent.
Sounds like a little conflict.
But I know that Representative Thompson has to leave at noon. And so Greg Garitas, I don't know how long you're gonna talk to us and so on, but I thought maybe what we could do, even though I know we have an agenda, and I'm gonna violate it, I guess. Maybe if there's some questions that we would have for Representative Thompson, we could do that.
I think it might make more sense to go ahead and do the first part of this page, talks about all the updates we're gonna have to deal with.
Okay.
And you talk to him about everything. So
Okay, all right.
that's just a suggestion.
Greg?
Yeah, thank you. And we have Adam Steerwall
Yes.
here
right.
today also.
So maybe give 2 of you like 30, 40 seconds. And
I hope you're guilty.
20
Okay.
seconds.
So let's jump right in, and good morning. And by the way, I appreciate Representative Thompson showing up today. I happened to run into him, he was at the popcorn machine at Rural King. So rumor has it, if you ever wanna see him, go to the popcorn machine at Rural King. I was lucky enough to find him there. So what I put together for council, if you notice, there's 3 sections here. The now, the in the future, and the capital improvement plan, which is later down on our list. I have also then coded at the very bottom, when I start referring to a numbered item, it's right down here, and I pass out a couple of those extra packets, we'll get you one. What we'll steal Adams once he's done with it. So I will be referring to those at the very bottom. I think it is important while Jeff is here, number one, budget and financing will require lit stability. What I mean by that is, as we go forward, as directed by both the commissioners and the council on Ronald Reagan Parkway, we are assuming that we will be using it, and then we will move into lit in general to pay that debt. And so what we want to make sure is, and I'm pointing out here, that the 1.2%, if we were to do that financing, and then in 28 that becomes 1%, maybe if it becomes 1.5%, that would cause us issues. But if it got back down, now keep in mind, I travel the state of Indiana and work with cities, towns, counties, townships, libraries, and so I'm hearing all kinds of interesting things. Like maybe the cities will need more and the counties will need less. I don't know of any county that needs less. So it's important as we go forward that we have stability. And so now I'm taking you to sheet number 1. You should be real proud of yourself, County Council, because keep in mind now, SB 1 doesn't change. You've heard people talk, and I know Rhonda talked about how there's other county councils that are, or in Bloomington, let's go to Monroe County. Bloomington controls the tax rate. Monroe County does not. That doesn't apply here. You've always kind of controlled the tax rate as the council. You will, other than cities, large cities. And so you should be proud of yourself that you've been able to maintain your 1.7% since 2020. We did have an increase in 2019 to 2020, and that was for the jail. Now keep in mind, everything, and I put to be determined in 26, keep in mind in 25, we did do a reallocation, if everybody remembers. Okay, and that's why I again brought this. The old edit was increased 0.05, and we reduced the jail lit 0.15. Now, if I was to take this out to 2028, all of these buckets will go away, and you'll basically have 1.20. Okay, so you could easily take your pen, cross out the 170 and put 1.20, or move 1.20 and put 2028 at the very top, right? Because that's what's going to happen, and cross out everything.
But we keep all of that 1.2.
Yes, sir. And later on, I'll get on into one of the other intricacies, but that's the basic line item, okay? And so, and you also see then on page 2, labeled at the very bottom, how we stand in as far as 92 counties. You're not Randolph, thank gosh. You have been very conservative and done very well. And if you look at it, you're on the second side, or what I call the lower quartile of tax rates for the lit rate. Remember, I'm calling this lit now in total, right? And even though it's segregated, as Nancy knows, for 20 years, it's been segregated into buckets, and Ann knows that. So, that's where we're at on lit, and keeping the stability is important if there's any legislative changes coming up that would change the 1.2. I think it's picking me up or something, but I hope that's okay.
I've got adjusted, working on it.
Okay, any questions on that? Any
What?
follow-up?
Great, I was just in Randolph County.
Okay,
What,
sorry.
explain your difference.
So, explain the difference. They probably have a big jail in this, and they're.
They do?
Yeah, I believe they do. I do know Pulaski County, I did that one, and they had a special jail lit from early. So there's a lot of special ones out there, and that's what's done that, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And so, so any other questions on that? And I'm gonna keep kind of moving since Dennis only gave me 30 seconds. Now, so number 2, decide if lit will change for 2026, okay? That's number 2 here on the paper, okay? So, number 2 on the paper, one of the things we need to talk about is that if you are going to, remember, we reallocate or relook at all of our lits, you know, every year, and we have, you know, for the last several years, and we didn't have a proposal in 26, we were gonna kind of have a status quo, and Eric had to leave a second, but you know, he's been keeping an eye on the E911, or he's back there, sorry. And Eric, I think we're fine there as far as you've been staying track on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what has come up, and I'll take you to number 3 here, okay, is that there is special legislation that allows, and it's really down there on the bottom of page 1, a special, basically homestead credit that you can do to help offset some of the lost revenue that you will experience due to $300. As you know, Ann is working really hard on calculating that net assessed valuation and ultimately get it all programmed to take into account. And I'm sure you understand there will be a new $300 credit coming off of Gene, your bill, and everybody else's bill, my bill. And keep in mind, I live in Hendricks County. So, you know, it will be coming off, and I do put the lesser of 10% or the tax bill, you know, of the tax bill, or $300.
Right.
So, yes,
I just wanna restate to make sure it's
sure, go for it.
in this head.
And are you on this page, Nancy? Okay,
Okay. So when it says we may adopt an ordinance, if we don't adopt an ordinance to pay for those credits, it will need to come from somewhere else within our funding, like
Well,
our operating balance.
yeah, and Jeff could help me out, but the answer is, I called it circuit breaker, and I guess in my mind, it's additional circuit breaker, but it's not. It's known as lost revenue because it's basically the $300 credit. So Nancy, when you get a $300 credit on your bill, you pay less, right?
Well, in housekeeping, we have to have the cash to fund that credit.
Well, so I'm going there.
Okay.
So you're gonna pay $300 less, right? And so as a result, we're still managing our budget, right, in total, and we still expect an X amount of property taxes to come in when we set our 2026 budget. Now, circuit breaker reduces the actual cash, right? So this will also reduce the actual cash that we receive, right? And so that's important for us, and I've got a calculation here later on. It's approximately 1.9 million. You gave us the number of homesteads and did. And you can see that if you want to go there, and you can see that on page 7, this document 7, okay? This document 7, we have shown you here the circuit breaker and lost revenue impact by fund, okay? And as you can see in 2026, we even had, it's interesting, we had a negative, or we had a reduction in 2024, some of that probably for schools, and we had an increase of 449,000. And the latest projection again for Hendricks County, and this isn't LSA or anything like that. The LSA was 2.8 million, but the specific one at the bottom here, increase in county share of lost revenue, basically 1,924,000. That's a guesstimate based upon everybody receiving the $300. And I'm assuming you all are kind of generally aware of the 300, right? Okay, does that make sense then? So Nancy, the answer is yes, we gotta be prepared for that. So I showed that circuit breaker and lost revenue going up at least that amount, it could go up even more, right?
So how do we fund, I'm gonna get $300 off my bill, where's that money coming from?
If we do nothing, according to
nothing,
this
if we don't do
statute,
it.
it will basically, and we don't have a balanced budget, assuming the circuit breaker and reduced loss, or the lost revenue, then it would come out of fund balance, out of each of those funds. You're right,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
Anything you wanna add to the 300, the homestead credit, and it says the county council may, so it's totally up to you all.
But would we
Now,
need
this
to
is a
raise-
special one that we may wanna focus on.
Would
so.
we need to raise the 16 million with that split rate?
What, where'd you get 16? 1.6 million?
That's 53,000 homesteads times $300.
Right, so our share would be, 1.6 million, okay? And, good question, if we were to do it all, I think we have the right to do it all for all entities.
Yeah, cause I don't
Yeah.
understand our share, like that,
Well, remember, it's treated as property taxes, it says here.
Yeah.
So you don't get the whole, the $300 is proportioned just like circuit breaker.
this is so confusing.
Well,
So, but we're not distributing anything else out to other communities, why would we distribute out circuit breaker? Can't they do that as part of their own tax rate? Shouldn't they have to?
they cannot levy a replacement for the $300. Okay, so it's a lost revenue. So let me further explain down on this page in number 8, maybe I should point this out, that the growth quotient granted was 4%, okay? I personally sat there and said, 4%, wow, that's really nice. Now, what was assumed within that 4%, it's my understanding, is that they calculated and expected about a 2% loss due to the $300 credit. Now, obviously, it may be more, so in other words, the growth quotient was raised to 4% for property taxes, but if we didn't have the $300, it is my understanding it would have been 2%, okay? And they gave the $300, so the growth quotient is 4% to net out roughly 2% new money. So that's why I'm cautioning every payroll committee, okay? If you go with the old story of, oh, they gave us a growth quotient of 3%, let's raise salary 3%. Okay, let's raise all of our budget 3%. Remember, you know better than that. We never said that because we always said there's 1/3 of your revenue coming from property taxes in general, 1/3 coming from lit, 1/3 miscellaneous revenue. We're gonna hear how level 6 revenue is gonna go down, interest income may go down sometime. So the key is you would never give equal to the growth quotient because you don't get that much of the growth quotient in real dollars. Okay?
Plus it's only on the levy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's where I'm confused, and I know Jeff probably needs to get up there if he has to leave at noon. In this world, the way we've done things, we have a, property tax replacement circuit breaker, the county does. So we get that cash in from income tax, and we fund that to go to all the taxpayers at tax time. We use that 12, 13, 14 million, and that money goes to the taxpayers. This year it's 6% on the tax, with the tax bill, there's a PTR rate, and it's 6%. So that's like 13, 14, 15 million. So in my mind, we've got that lump of money and we're funding that. How how do we fund that much money? That's where I'm getting the 16 million.
Yeah.
Don't we
Without
need-
additional change, you would not be able to.
We need to adopt a rate.
You need to consider.
Okay.
Jeff, would you wanna add anything to it? To either unmuddy it or muddy it?
I mean, the 2% in net statewide is correct, because there will be additional money for most all units. It won't be 4%, it's about 2%, that's true. But beyond that, I mean, that's a lot more than the state's what I've said. It's about, 10 times as much as the state's gonna receive in new dollars. So, but don't count on 4%, it's probably more like 2.
And Jeff, if we wanna give the additional credit to offset the deduction, the further deduction, we could use that new state law, correct?
The lit portion, as I understand it, and that was the intent at least for sure, is it only applies to the county portion of the net levy, the county portion. So you could reduce homeowner taxes on the county portion only. I call them carve-outs. It affects no other units. That's an option you have right now by the new law.
That's
But
right.
we're collecting the tax throughout the whole, our 1.2 throughout, if we collected that, throughout, every taxpayer's paying that, but they won't get the benefit in the towns?
That's on the lit side. You would adopt a special lit that would only apply to replace county net levy. It's net levy after the very, very last step that you pay. So you therefore could reduce homeowner taxpayer or tax bills by that amount, if you so choose.
For only unincorporated areas?
No, this is in the current, in page 26, it's for page 26. In the new system, in page 28, that's a different discussion. We've got 2 years to get that, modified if need be.
Okay.
So, again, this is step number 1, we're trying to introduce it. Thanks, Jeff. Is there anything else that?
We've got questions for him if he's gonna.
Okay.
My biggest question that I have is,
That's okay, I'm fine.
we haven't managed anything of how the towns, the libraries, the schools, the fire departments have grown and managed their businesses. Why should the county council be responsible for passing tax rates for them when we have no authority on how they do anything that they do?
And right now, I guess the issue is you send them money based upon levy, don't you?
Yes.
So the higher they push that levy, the more they receive. And you're the one taking the vote. And philosophically, there's a lot of money that goes to units of government in this county that people never say boo about. And I'll grant you right now, Senate Bill 1 puts a lot of control in the county council. Call it the way it is. And that's not by accident. Because there's a lot of pushback to allow libraries and townships to raise levy. For one thing, just the mechanics of that, you've gotta think really simple. And from a withholding standpoint, you'll be 1 or 2 spots. You're inside a large city or you're outside. That's the only discussion.
So does the entire county, then if we pass a lit for libraries, does the entire county pay for those libraries then?
Yes, and that's current law too, right now. Currently, you adopt a lit and goes to libraries, the whole county pays, currently. Same thing for townships. It's all happening right now, it's in the weeds, because it's all based on levy.
How would that get distributed back out then for townships?
For townships, trying to think exactly what's in there, it's based on population, I believe.
I believe it
I believe
is.
it's population for townships. I know fire and EMS, we made it based upon population and number of square miles times 20. These really rural townships have few people, but need services.
You said square miles, Jeff?
The number of square miles times 20, that can be modified. We've got 2 years to modify some of those things with regard to that.
What happens if we say, no, we're not gonna pass a tax rate for a town?
As far as the small towns,
Yeah.
the small towns, that's in your court. That's right now, what we say, if you
Why
adopt.
can't, if a town of 3,500 can do it, why can't a town of 2,000 for 5?
And we could change that. I know in regard to the State Department of Revenue becomes the complexity of operating that.
Well, it's very complex for us to have to pass income taxes for a group of people, like I said, that we're not.
Familiar with their operations.
We're not familiar with their operations at all. It does, we don't need to be, that's not our,
You're
I
not
guess if you wanna tell us it's our,
compensating.
if that's gonna be our job, then we need, it's gonna cost a lot more for us to do it, cause it'll be a lot more work if we have to manage every single small town and other entity in this county to watch their budgets to pass taxes. That's,
A little bit like what we did years ago when Mitch was, and we were reviewing all the budgets, but we weren't taking
yeah,
action.
that's crazy.
But right now, Lita's going to those small towns, it's going there right now.
By formula, but that, yes.
Yeah. And at least, well, I'll be open to something else, but you can't base it on what levy. To me, levy drives behavior that's not good. Because you shove those property taxes higher, and guess what? You get more levy. Is that the way to go? The other thing that really we gotta fix is right now, if you're above the cap and you raise the tax rate, guess what? People don't pay a penny more, but the other units lose, don't they? And if you lower the tax rate, guess what? They don't pay a penny less, but that unit that lowers, guess what? They lose revenue. I made the public statement, if I was on a county council, would I drop the property tax rate? No way. Because guess what? For all the people in cities and towns, don't see a penny change in the bill, but the other units get a windfall. Is that the way to govern?
Well, we're governing that way because of the property tax caps.
Yeah, and it's because of property tax caps, we have a levy-based system, don't we? And a levy-based system with the property tax caps that are rate-based is causing the problem. That's what's happening mathematically.
What's gonna happen, my opinion, what's gonna happen with this is people in the towns are gonna pay a lot more income taxes than they're paying right now because they're gonna have our county rate plus 1.2, because every town's gonna do 1.2, they have to even have a chance of surviving. So people in towns are in Hendricks County paying almost 3% income taxes to get $300 savings in their property tax bill. And it just, this whole thing, I think everybody in this whole thing's gonna end up paying more taxes. Bottom line. It's not gonna lower anybody's taxes on anything.
I'm not sure I agree with that, that's okay.
And the last thing is that I'm concerned with is we have to redo this every single year, the tax rates, and that's.
And I said I'm open to that discussion. Yeah, I understand that concern.
Jeff and I specifically had that discussion on any bonds that are financed. Like, we've got a really good credit rating on our jail bonds, okay? Our jail bonds have to carry over into the 1.2. Our Ronald Reagan Parkway, if we move ahead, will carry over into that. So we've talked about especially if there's a debt, being able to go to Standard & Poor's and saying that portion of renewal is automatic. And that would help preserve our awesome credit rating that we've worked hard.
And that may be in current code, because some of those provisions we didn't delete. The current law says you've got to adopt enough lit to cover that. And if that was taken out, we got to change that. You have to do that. It's automatic.
That was taken out.
Was it actually taken out?
You left in, you're not allowed to reduce it below 125. But you gave everybody the option to adopt it or not.
Okay, if that's the case, we need to put it in code, that if you've got bonds, you've got to keep that lit. There's no discussion. It has to be that way.
Can we make it where it automatically continues as opposed to
Maybe next year.
requiring?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, these goes into effect in page 28 for the lit side. We've got 2 years.
How do the schools make up their loss of income taxes?
For the lit side?
Yeah.
Well, for the schools, here's a scenario. It's about 55 million statewide. They receive, not all schools receive it. It's based upon what kind of counties you're in. The cap loss right now for schools is $500 million. $500 million is what they lose. So they're gonna give up 55 million to get 500 million reduction in cap loss. Huge gain for them.
How is the cap loss going to look?
Because then the next step, that's the hard step, is when you sum all the rates, hit exactly no more than $3. Because then what occurs? That point what occurs? As long as you're at $3, there's no cap loss. And below that, then this will be true. Every single unit, you raise the tax rate and guess what happens? You pay more. And if the county council lowers the tax rate, guess what happens? You pay less. It's false today. It's false as false can be. And that's not the way to govern, is to have you raising the tax rate and nobody pays more, but other units you take from them. We see that happening, don't we, right now?
What about the cap law, so there's not many cap laws at the 1% and 2%?
Because for the 1%, goes to a 2/3 deduction. The 2% properties, it's a 1/3 deduction. So every single parcel in the state hits the cap at exactly $3. And you cap the rates at $3. There's no cap loss.
So all of the rates are all gonna be $3. Because the amount of money we're losing at the 1/3 rate of the homestead is, and the 2%, yeah.
We projected it probably would occur in 6 to 8 years here, because we have a pretty low tax rate. But in most cases, 5 years, you'll be there in other counties.
But the total dollars potentially collected really is not gonna change. It's just all hit the cap at the same spot. See, right now, high value homes hit the cap at about $1.40. Other homes hit the cap at over $4.
Right.
So the cap loss really causes distortion in behavior. Bad behavior in my opinion. That's the key to when we get there.
Jeff, you may have to come back and explain all this again to us.
And I can't often. And again, the key is we've got some more time. The actual, when you hit the 1/3, 2/3, goes into effect and pay 31. We've got some time, but that's the hard vote. I said publicly, a hard vote when you cap the summation of the rates at $3. This county's pretty good. Other counties, we have cities and towns that rates at 2.5. The total rate is $6. The cap loss is off the charts. And guess what the game is? Push that rate as high as you can so the other units won't get your dollars. That's not the way to go. It's not. And it's hard, but if we do the same thing over and over, guess what? You get the same result. We should expect it.
Learned behavior.
Yeah, it's learned behavior. And I know I presented an assaulter task force a little over a year ago. I said, I'm watching city and town debt. And it's starting to do the same thing that schools have done. I don't blame the schools. They push that debt higher, because guess what? I've heard it said, we do all these things for our school corporation, and you will taxpayer pay a penny more. And guess what? It is the truth. Won't pay a penny more. But it comes from the other units. And my pushback to schools has been this. Well, we have local control. Wait a minute. You're affecting all the taxpayers in Hendricks County. You affect them all when you do that. And that's when I have to get involved. Because they do affect them all. Am I making sense? Yeah. Love to come back and talk about it multiple times.
Jeff, thank you.
Thank you.
for
Appreciate your
coming.
time.
We appreciate all you've done and kind of the way you approach things and so forth, but we know you're open to
And that,
both criticism and constructive comments.
as I should be.
Thank you so much.
Respect it. Thank you. Thank you.
So to focus back, that's why I'm trying to set the sections up between now and the future. And as Jeff said, there's things out there in 2030, but I don't want you to get sidetracked. I want to keep on course what we need to do now to go everywhere we can. So Nancy, you brought up, and we brought up the point that yes, the county council may help itself, but under 2B, okay, I brought up, okay, we've been thinking about this in other communities. What happens if we adjust public safety? I'm looking at that one, the one chart on local income taxes, number 1. What if we did public safety, increase that for the next 2, this one, okay? We could increase public safety for the next 2 years. That affects people across the board. It doesn't affect schools, but it would, cities and towns, okay? Then, or we could do, I noticed that, put down seated. We could do seated like we've done, and that would impact people going forward, cities and towns and the county. And we could replace some revenue there. So the whole important point is the deadline for the notice to other entities, August 1, that we're changing the lit. So I wanted to put everybody on notice about that. We originally thought it was July 1, but it's August 1. And we have to give notice to Avon or something like that, that we may be changing the lit. And I'm sure Adam has a form that you can follow if you need. But so that's why I really want you to get you thinking on, do we wanna do the additional homestead? Do we wanna do something else? Do we wanna do any reallocation? That's the main focus for what we need to go on right now, okay?
How much, so the $300 per person is how much per homestead total? 16 million?
16 million is,
And that's happening for next year, right?
It's on page 7.
Yep.
This 7, and it's 16 happening this year.
Right.
Pay
So
26.
if we don't, if everybody isn't going to lose that money, we would have to do about a 0.2 higher property tax replacement, because that'll be about 14, 15 million in order for it to stay revenue neutral.
so does our current PTRC go away for May 26?
No.
2028.
So, because some people get 600.
1.1 is 7.5 million, so it's gonna be, it's gonna be a 0.22 or something right around there.
So here's what we'd like to do is, again, we don't wanna spend hours on one concept. We wanna keep moving ahead.
But what I'm saying is
So-
though, is if it's a 16 million shortfall to the county, we need, we have.
Not to the county as a whole.
Right, but that shortfall will be to everybody unless we pass a 0.22 additional property tax replacement bet to make it up for it.
Amen. Go ahead.
How does the property tax replacement on the levy, because right now you find the levy, you find out people are owed, then subtract $300, that's why the revenue lost. So it's not, you factor in the, property tax replacement credit,
It comes off at the end also.
oh, it comes up at the
But
end.
I believe the 300 is the last
The very
one.
end, yeah.
It's the very end, so
So-
it's the very end.
So you, if you've increased,
You may impact the 10% or less, or $300.
Could we switch out, use our property tax replacement for the $300?
No, you can't eliminate the three, yeah. So,
That's a thought.
so what we wanna do is, obviously, we want council to consider a couple things, and then we can run some numbers and also verify, according to the homestead deduction, Indiana Department of Revenue will help you get the right rate, you know, to give anything additional that you wanna give, or we can go back to our, you know, what would we want to do other than that, okay? So that's the key.
I'm sorry I keep hogging time, but I've lived this stuff for so long. My personal opinion is our PSAP rate needs to go back up where it will cover the 911 budget. It was cut in half to share, which was fine with the public safety. We split that rate, remember at 10, we split it.
It's right there on 25,
Right.
yeah.
So the PSAP, we're bringing in three and a half million, their budget is 7.5. So, but we have cash balance, so we're gonna whittle,
And we have.
whittle that down.
They get the 911 money too.
Right, but we've whittled that down to,
Right. It's gonna start, it's going,
it's gonna go fast.
it's gonna start, we're gonna have to, at some point in time, go back up with it.
So that's the point why I was asking you that, and we'll put that in the sustainability. Remember, I think my point to Jeff also with the stability of the rate is keep in mind, once we get the 26 budget, we'll be projecting in the sustainability 27, 28, and 29. We've got to show the rating agency our flight path out of this issue. Okay, I'm gonna just call it that. And that will show us the flight plan that we can share with outside agencies, such as the rating agency. Because the last thing I want you to do is get it, as soon as they wake up in Chicago and New York and start hearing this, as we move ahead, they're gonna say, oh, where's your plan? Okay, and we wanna have our plan right here. That's what I'm doing with all of my county clients.
So, Greg, I'm not a councilman, I'm a commissioner, but what is your recommendation, kind of bottom line recommendation that the council needs to do now meaning soon, to cover this?
Okay, under 2A and 2B, we need to look at if we can
You're on-
increase
you're on this
2A,
page here. You're on
2B,
this page
yeah.
here. Yeah.
The practical impacts. We need to figure out if we can do the additional PTRC or if we need to go to one of the other taxes to get.
I mean, we have to have all this information by basically in a month,
Mhm.
and make a decision at our July meeting.
Yeah. Right.
And
Believe me, I know.
are you putting that together? With
well-
Ann's putting it together, giving you data?
All of us.
Yeah, we give them the information.
I mean, the key is to that's why we wanted this meeting now.
Yes.
Introduce concepts, bring you up to date, and Larry was spot on. Let the dust settle. The dust just settled over the last 30 days, and I guarantee you it's not settled. You know, when I was eating popcorn, it's not settled. I can guarantee you. So, but we got to get our plan, and that's the key. Okay? Any other on that? Okay, assessed value will decrease for homesteads. You know that, right? This is document chart number 4. Okay, chart number 4 shows you how it will decrease in 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. And this is the example we used for $500,000. Okay. So important to know, each and every year, the net AV will go down, okay? Now, what else will go down? Well, I've got chart number 5, okay? The assessed value for the 2% property. As you can see here, 6%, 6.4, to remind you 2%, Mr. Wyatt, you have 2% property on your farm, right? Yep. And so, also apartments. Don't ask me why they did that. That's really a can of worms. But they adjusted 2% property, okay? And so that's going down, okay? So that's chart number 5. Then what we said is chart number 6. Did you have a question, Gary? Sorry.
Aren't we going to be making this a very unfriendly business state by pushing property taxes to every single business to 3%? Because they're all gonna be at 3%.
The commercial tax bill will go up each and every year as the tax rate, that was my point
Goes up every year.
in number 7, as the tax rate goes up closer to 3. So my answer would be, commercial will shift.
Yeah.
Okay, will we make it an unfriendly? Well, Eric, you can't, it'll be more, let me
Every
answer.
small business owner in this county is gonna get hammered by it.
Well, now, wait a minute. So that's where I'm going with this personal property, okay?
Personal property, I mean, that goes.
So personal property goes from the 80,000 to 2 million deduction in pay 27. And if you've never seen a Form 103, I really want you to kind of see it, some of you have. Okay, page 204, if you look in the middle there on line number 53, the 30% floor for new property is gone, will go. This is obviously the 24 tax return. The 25, for new property, it won't be there. Now, unless,
it's in out of TIF district.
and so if it's the warehouse, but we haven't tiffed it.
And there's no floor.
Right. Right. So keep in mind, in Hendricks County, the county as a whole, we have never tiffed personal property. And I don't think I'd ever recommend it. But, so, we do not have a TIF issue with personal property. Okay, now, what will happen, they will have, in essence, a floor. If you look back on page 3 of 4 of your Form 103, because look at that column labeled TTV. Okay, you see that some, depending on the pool, remember the pool is a depreciable lives, and Larry, I'm preaching to you like you're not been an assessor and you don't know.
I've seen too many of them.
Yeah. But you know, there's floors, actually, I think it's kind of interesting, floor 1, or pool 1 has a floor of 20, then it goes 15, 10, and 5. Now, maybe this will go to 0, but it hasn't, you know, at this point, I'm not aware of those true tax values going to 0.
So
The floor is going to 0.
the floor though, while you don't TIF any business personal property now, that 30% floor will remain if the property is within an allocation area. So you have TIF some of those industrial buildings, like in the southern part of the county. So those folks will still remain subject to the 30% floor.
So we had steel mill, that personal property was TIF, and we're out of the TIF, it's done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moot point.
For this
It's
whole 5, so it can
long.
go away, it's gonna be under the 2 million anyway, probably.
So this
Yeah,
is.
it's not in the TIF. You know,
Right,
it's not in
it's
our
not
TIF
TIF
anymore. We don't have a TIF there.
So, the floor remains if the property was placed in service before January 1, 2025. The floor remains if it was placed in service after January 1, 2025 and is in an allocation area. Does not have to be, you don't have to capture TIF on the business personal property for it to remain. So, nobody knows whether they're really within an allocation area, so everyone's gonna have to find that out.
The taxpayer.
The taxpayer,
But
you could have taxpayers right next to each other, the one subject to the floor and one isn't. But what really matters is those taxes all flow right to the base. So there is no TIF collected on it, but it will go to all of your other underlying tax units and to your general fund. To the extent that it is then further removed, you just shift the burden from that taxpayer on back to everybody else and increasing rate even further.
But again, in Hendricks County, we have personal property, obviously in warehouses, but we don't have a TIF, so it will just act normal. And there'll be different bases, but that's the tax rate. But the whole point is, personal property is going down, okay? And that 80,000 going to 2 million is very, very significant. Now, what else is going down? Let's go to number 6 on the impacts. Number 6, I'm a farmer, for us farmers, our value per acre will be going down, and I specifically put the number here from the current 2280 to 2120. Obviously, I think the productivity adjustment may still apply. That I don't think was eliminated. Okay.
But isn't Dave, wasn't the 2280 was up from like 1900, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, cause it's an Olympic average. And what you're paying for now is what was incurred back during COVID.
Yeah.
With increased commodity prices and such, and that's what you're paying for in arrears now.
What do you mean by Olympic?
It used to be like over 6 years, and I think they had to take,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Right, it was phasing up.
Yeah, phasing up and then phasing down, so whenever there was a high year, they would always take that one out.
Okay,
And I think that's what the Olympic part of it was, if I'm not mistaken, so.
okay.
And then, once that high would come, if you had two high ones back to back, then you'd have to have, one of them would have to stay and one of them would have to go,
Yeah.
until it would fall off after 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, so, back number 7 on the impacts, okay, so, should I say more? AV's going down, right? Tax rate, if we keep the same levy, if we are able to, then AV goes down, tax rate goes up. Why I said in number 7, tax rates will go up, so don't try and focus on the 26.91 pennies we've always been focusing on, and which was down even though we did our new bond issue for the highway garage. It went down from the 28.59 pennies. And keep in mind, your sustainability shows you, we were up in the 30s or something like that. I don't know about everybody else, but we've been lowering tax rates here in Hendricks County for our portion, which is the county's portion, okay? And we only live with 26 pennies, okay? So that's important to note. Number 8, then, expected loss in there. So under the section now, as we go forward with the 26 budget, we've got to think about the drawdown in cash balances. We got to think about how we want to realign lit, and we got to think carefully about sustainability in the future. I kept saying in the past, the perfect storm will eventually come. It's here, in my opinion. So anything else that you believe we need to address now from the county council, county commissioner standpoint?
I think I can shortcut a couple things for you to help sort of wrap it up a little bit.
On the now.
On the now, so on these deductions. So the deductions will decrease the net assessed value, which will shove rates up, right? Taxes may or may not change because your circuit breaker percentage is based off your gross assessed value, not your net assessed value. So it's a giant shell game in and of itself. So we are just artificially lowering net assessed values and raising tax rates. And as the legislature said, they want to have everything be at some level rate and then being able to adjust off of that. Now, when the business personal property comes out, that removes taxpayers. That does not just shell game the rates around. That will further exacerbate the rate issue. You may or may not be blamed for, but that will also happen, and that will also shift burden around to the various different taxpayers that are left. But that's the sort of the sum of the very high level.
I think here's where Ann may get torpedoed by some of the taxpayers, and I just did when we create, and I don't mean you intentionally, but they come to you to pay to the treasurer and to the auditor's office that when they pay their property taxes. What we've seen is when we create a new fire territory, and let's say we're going from a nickel to 25 cents, that second page of the property tax bill in one case said 477% increase in the bill. No, it was one tax rate of about 5. But no one wanted to focus on the net impact was 10, as the fire territory had alleged. But the 477 shows up on one line on the second page. You know where we compare the last year's tax rate, this year's tax rate? That thing is worthless now, because guess what? That second page, in my opinion, will only show the property tax shift. It won't show what truly is happening, if you understand what I mean. And if you don't understand, I'm sorry I didn't make you a copy of your tax bill, but look at your second page of your tax bill, which shows the percentage change in rates.
Going
Yes,
back
sir.
to what
Remember, I work in the trenches.
Thompson said, as long as there's a 1% tax cap, people aren't gonna know if our rates change. And he said that's the whole idea, is get them to see our rates change. With a 1% cap, they're not gonna know, they don't care.
Cause they'll be at the gap.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what is this accomplishment? So they said that's the whole thing they want to do, is to feel the rates go up and down what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't, hey, there's a 1% cap.
Right, and so what we're trying to do is deal with what we've got
I know,
and
but
move
it's-
you forward, but.
Well, I think Eric's making a good point in what they say and what the actual result of the bill is, nowhere close to a line on any level.
I like to
That's
say
a real thing.
the 1, 2, 3 circuit breaker made a good headline. It did not mathematically work out.
No.
And I've been able to prove that
So I
all
wanted
along.
to get us-
Okay, can we move to the section in the future?
No.
So,
Remember, I have a lot of bosses.
just so they kind of know what needs to be done, and Ann's gonna direct that, and, yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, again, this is round one,
I know.
many rounds to go.
I know.
Okay, in the future, the county will, again, we don't have to worry about this until, I'm gonna say we need to start worrying about it January of 27. Obviously, you gotta be doing your budget every month here going forward, so January of 27 for enactment by July of 27, okay? This July of 27 will come like a freight train.
What's gonna be really important for that is the state, if they're doing it this way, and we're gonna be so much more dependent on income taxes, we need to know that total income tax for each division, like now. Like not on December 29th of 2026, I mean, they need to get it to us like within the next year.
Oh, yeah, you mean the adjusted gross
Yes.
income?
For each by division, because that's gonna,
Oh,
without
Eric,
that, this is.
they're not gonna make
They're
it.
not gonna make that.
Then we can't do this.
You're shooting in the
Eric,
sky.
Yes.
they probably are not gonna make it. Okay? So that's why I'm saying, January of 27, and I mean, let's take Avon for an example. How in the heck will Indiana Department of Revenue know who's within that big blue donut hole of the whole Avon, if we consider that whiteboard Avon? And by the way, if you take that blue dot and put about 15 more up there, how in the heck will NDOT ever know? Or not NDOT, I'm sorry, Indiana Department of Revenue. Okay, but my goal is to keep moving you, okay? And so you're right, we would need to know adjusted gross income. Hopefully, they've been trying to get real-time adjusted gross income, because Plainfield, Avon, and Brownsburg will need it too, and they'll be wanting to know it real soon.
I mean, they're gonna have to do geofencing, and the only way they can do that is with a really good GIS system. And ours is one of the better, but it's still not perfect. What about those counties that have any GIS system that's just,
Yeah, so they've done 2 counties, and, they've been test running Westfield. In the past, I had all that information pretty early on. And so it's a matter of, we got 90 counties to go. That's a lot.
It's gonna get way worse as we move forward. So if you guys are thinking it's gonna get better, I'm just letting you know now that it doesn't.
I was really wondering how you felt about that.
And I'm the optimist.
Have you told your dad that?
Yeah, that's why he left
Okay.
before Adam got here.
You heard the unabridged, unfiltered version.
In the future, number 8, 9, and 10, I think what I've given you, and then when we move to the capital section, okay, the capital improvement plan, number 8 is the hypothetical that I gave you last year on the amortization schedule for the Ronald Reagan Parkway bonds of 2025. Now, it is my understanding that the council, the other meeting, wanted us to move ahead, and I believe the commissioners had decided for us to move ahead. So we were moving ahead, and I asked Jeff, I said, when we get down to the rating agency call, and they say, what happens when the state takes away your 1.2 and I don't get paid my debt service? you know, I've asked Jeff that if he could be available for a certain part of that phone call, because, you know, that will be a Teams meeting, it'll take several hours. And I do not want the credit rating of Hendricks County to go down for something beyond our control. Okay? So we gotta cover ourselves here, okay? And it is my understanding, no one's done any bonds like this yet, okay? We'll probably be the first, okay?
So how's the credit ratings gonna give us a credit rating on a bond of this size? And who's gonna buy them with the unforeseen reasons of what's gonna happen potentially in the future? Because why in the hell would I wanna buy a bond and spend millions of dollars on something I have no clue on how it's gonna be funded in the future, and we end up.
Well, again, we will have our clue, we will have our path, and we will educate Standard & Poor's on that, we will have our plan, and we'll have, basically, I've said, we're gonna have to have the section that says we're covered at least 100% on all debt. Jeff thought it was in there now, but go ahead.
So, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Do we know once the whole when is the property tax system finally, they're done the changes, incremental changes, when's that last year of that?
2030 or 2031?
When it changes later,
No, like, so we have all the different deductions and all that, so 2031's the last year, then that's when it stabilizes, right? That's where it's gonna be, in theory.
yes, okay.
What is our loss of revenue at that point?
I don't know. I've not done those calculations.
And the reason why I'm asking that is because I'm very hesitant now to fund the Parkway when we don't know how much money we're gonna be losing on property taxes over the next 6 years. It could be tens of millions of dollars by the time they get them screwing around with it.
Or I think you heard Jeff say, I would table that, or I would also encourage you to have further discussion.
We're gonna wanna know that answer before we.
Yeah, I need to know how much money we're gonna be down, because if we're gonna, I mean, we have some fluff in our budget, obviously, we've been building our funds up. But if it's significantly more than what we know of right now, and we have a $10 million shortfall because property taxes have got all these things, we're either gonna have to cut services greatly, or we're gonna have to raise the income tax. If we have this 2 cents or whatever it is in the income tax to pay for the Parkway, we may not be able to do that.
Well,
We're
let me
paying for a road, we
keep-
can't pay for other things.
Let me keep moving on, and maybe I can help you with a little bit.
Alright.
So on the bottom of the amortization schedule number 8, okay, at the bottom there, I said the county is certified to receive 46 million in 2025. 25%, which is the cap, is 11 million. We have we would have this new debt. And back on page 10, we have the jail, okay? Both of those combined would be less than 8 million, so we don't have the 25% that you can, for the next 2 years, you cannot use more than 25% of your lit for any debt service.
So it includes the old,
Yes, that's the way I read it.
maybe.
It says,
I don't like
enter
this, when Abby's
into.
doing this, I don't like this.
I mean, if, we were sitting around this table, and then we were talking about a bill, and they're like, oh, well, we need to worry about the transition period from when Senate Bill 1 comes enacted, and then when all the new income taxes, become in effect. Right, if we have a bunch of people issuing income tax bonds and then enter, that could cause a problem. So if we were talking about that, and I scratched down a little note, they basically put that little scratch note into the bill.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not drafted, pathetic might be a generous term. It's hard to tell what the numerator, the denominator is, what you're actually comparing it to. It is a smaller problem, a very small problem of the issue though. The big issue is we run into 2027, everything expires, subject to renewal and all the transition. And then in 2031, it's subject to annual renewal then.
So what I did is I was conservative, I took both, you know, if anybody had this read, I think it's only applicable to the new debt. But I said, if we add the two together, we are very comfortable. We're way under the 25%. That was my point, okay? And so, you know, and we could use cash, I'm very hesitant about that, but to buy it down. But I wanted to show you that, and on page 9, we cannot haul, and, you know, this is what Adam and I have talked about. We don't have a reason to refinance this, and, you know, the 25% might cause a problem here, it would not, we're still way under it. But as you can see on page 9, this 9, okay, that we can't call this until 2030, and our interest rates are not bad at all. Okay, we go even out, the outliers were 2%. So we did fabulous on this debt when we did the 2020 bond. And remember, the interest rates of 4%, you were given more money for those. Okay, a premium bond. So that's very, very important.
You said that, that's not a guarantee if you do this with the rate.
No, I'm not seeing any, I used 5%, we're selling, we sold earlier this year at 4.5, a pretty major deal for Hancock County. And so, you know, up at the, around this level. But I'm not I'm not saying that, David, I'm just saying what the past was.
That's prior to SB 1 too.
Correct. So again, we got a chart, we've got our capital improvement plan coming up. So number 11, which is this chart, so this document, so this one shows you right now up in this section here, the estimated maximum future lit. Currently, if we use the 1.2%, it would give us 67 million. Obviously, right below that, you see what we get in Cadget, PSC, Public Safety Lit, Jail, PSAP edit, and a total of 46 million, okay? That's important. If we use that 46 and we gross it up to 47 with additional growth, then what that would be is a lit rate of 0.85 to break even, okay? That's what we're saying at this point in time. So,
Without the Ronald Reagan.
pardon me?
Without Ronald Reagan.
Edit brings in 884. I don't think I added in, yes, the Ronald Reagan 3.9.
What would the rate be for that?
The 85 might go to 88. Okay.
So Greg, when you look at this total estimated income,
$5.6 billion.
$1 billion, do you go back and look at the last 5 years and calculate a growth rate in with that, with increased salaries and wages as well as the growth of population? And can you estimate that for the next 5?
Sure, we can. We have not done that here.
And that 0.85 doesn't include the 0.25, we're gonna have to raise it now to make up for all the money we're losing on property taxes.
It doesn't, but remember, that will go, that's a one-time shot, right?
That's
300. And then
that's only one time?
3 years.
3 years?
Or next 26.
the
27.
300 is granted in 26, 27, is it 28 also?
I think
thought
also,
maybe-
yeah. But
Okay,
it's a shorter period of time.
yeah.
And then the state's definitely not gonna make us do any kind of property tax replacement. Okay.
So
Public
again,
and elected officials.
I point out where we are at this point, okay?
Right.
So to give us a little glide path. Now, I did not go into, okay, let's go back to the practical impacts, and we're trying to wind this down and then move to your item, and I think the capital improvement then in a few minutes. In the future, you see the different sections here. Number 2, County Council will approve all tax rates except large towns. So Avon, Brownsburg, Danville, and Plainfield. I don't think is there
Pittsboro
any-
also is
Pittsboro,
a large
that's
town.
out. They will fall in and they will do their own.
they
Yeah,
qualify.
cause they're 3,800 I found yesterday.
That's what annexation is.
Yeah. So, fire EMS, will have .4, again, these are likely to change when I'm trying to impress upon the legislature. If you change the county's 1.2, we would have a problem, obviously, if we did Ronald Reagan Parkway. Okay, we gotta make sure they don't do that if we go forward. Small towns, Eric, you hit that on C. D, I sometimes wonder about people's math. Maybe I didn't use my 10 key right. But my .40 of A, B, and C adds up to 1.8, but the maximum is 1.70. So the answer is somebody loses, and county council decides. So
my question is, the 1.2 for towns, is that a 1.2 for the whole county, or is that 1.2 for just inside their municipality?
Yes.
it's charged over the entire county.
It is?
So, yes. So I can.
So somebody that's in Brownsburg is paying property
No.
taxes?
You said small towns. If you use the word small towns, you're under 3,500.
Right, but we're doing the tax rate for them.
Yes.
Is that
For
just
small
inside, is
towns.
that inside their border?
No. So,
Or am I paying, living in the county, paying a tax rate for a town listening to survive?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yes,
So
you are.
So is everybody else in the county there, aren't they? Yes, everybody else in the county is too.
hold on. So
C,
I
we're
can-
on C.
I could give an hour-and-a-half presentation on just this new link. Okay, so we got 10 minutes to do an hour-and-a-half. The tax base is different depending on what component we're talking about. The adopting body is different depending on what we're talking about, and the distribution is different. In the distribution, by being that different, you decide, everyone has a different optional distribution that you can make. It is about as rigid as water. So when it comes to the taxes that get imposed on the entire county's tax base, which is how it works now, is the county's rate, the fire and EMS rate, and the small town rate, and then the non-municipal rate, which is like libraries and townships.
So the county council's responsible
Yep.
for all those, and so
So
it's
we're making
basically
everybody
everybody.
in the county pay for the small towns?
No, the tax base is only, for that one, it's the entire county minus large cities and towns. So, you will, if you live in an unincorporated area, is Amo in Hendricks County?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Amo is below the 3,500. So if you live in Amo, you will pay whatever the county puts on for their rate, whatever they put on for fire and EMS, the small city and town rate, and, the non-municipal rate.
So what if I live outside of Amo?
Then you pay the exact same thing. But, so for the distribution of the small town rate, the county council will be able to keep up to 75% of that.
C,
Yeah.
the note to C.
So, yeah, that is to help basically offset the idea that if you have a bunch of people living in an unincorporated area in a few small towns, that you're basically balancing that out.
So
It gets
it's
way more complicated from here.
So in reality, you've got the 1.2 as the max rate for county services, plus if you would do C.
Yeah, you could take.
But again, this is something you'd start hammering out in I'm saying January 2027. Okay?
Question, Jeff.
Or maybe 2020.
Jeff referenced how schools that manage their debt, and I agree with them, they probably mismanage that. Are these guys gonna have to review, cause there's nothing in here, townships, libraries, school, what about school? How about the school rate?
Schools don't get any.
Somehow the schools don't get any cap loss anymore. I don't know how that happens, but they just magically.
That's not
don't.
really it.
Yeah, we won't go into
You just
that
said
one
that.
yet.
You just said that.
So no, there is no lit for schools.
Somehow they just don't get it. I mean, yeah.
So how do they make up this loss?
Well, that was.
Referendum, so your property taxes go up.
Where's, move their rate outside the tax caps too.
Okay, moving on. So at the bottom there, you can see, what we've also done is there a little math error too, because once you do the 1.2 rate, and you add up the 1.8 rates, right? If you can see my math, you get a 3%, well, the max is 2.9. So there's a little slight math error there, or a slight intentional,
So the
look, you
one,
should have
the
added
one,
it.
the 1.2 does not include the big towns, right?
Right.
I'm very uncomfortable with this because we are taxing different people, different amounts in the county depending on where they live.
Yes, yes.
No, you're not.
Yes,
but
we are.
The Senate and the legislator are making you do it.
But that's,
Well, I mean, well, according to them, when I brought this up, they said it was optional.
In Hendricks County.
It is, it is
That's what they told me.
What part of it's optional?
do all these towns just go
To
away?
levy the
What,
rates.
what if we adopted a policy, we're not imposing any municipal tax rates, because that's not fair to our taxpayers, the county as a whole, to have different tax rates, and we just don't do it, the towns are just gone. I mean, they're all, like, those smaller towns are all on shoestring budgets anyway, they don't have money to do anything.
They don't.
They would need to replace their lit that they're collecting now. That would be really, really important.
How?
How do they do
Anarchy.
it?
Huh?
Anarchy.
What'd you say?
I mean,
Anarchy.
I mean, this also assumes that you will want to impose the rates, because the rates go to zero every year. So if, I don't know, the paper doesn't publish the notice in time and you miss the deadline, it just goes to zero. In that case, everybody just takes a year off from policing and fire, I guess.
Number 5.
Greg,
Number 5.
One real quick question.
Sure.
When you have the 2.9 as the max, is there a pecking order this goes?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
whatever
guys
packing
decide.
order you
We're gonna be
guys
the
do.
top ones. So the towns can't do anything until we adopt something?
No, they're completely independent, the large cities and towns.
Okay,
So,
all right.
so if you can think about this on a lot of different ways, but you are either pay a small town rate or a large town rate. A large town rate is just within that municipal border, so Plainfield, Brownsburg, Avon, Danville, Pittsburgh can have their own 1.2. Right, and it's only on their payers,
From their taxpayers.
right?
In their geofence.
In their geofence. Now, the question is 1.2 of 100% of that is equal to proportional share they were getting,
Town by town
town
basis.
by town?
So-
You'll have to figure that out. according to-
Here's the way to look at it, everybody that's in the town
Yeah,
in Hendricks County is gonna be paying at least, at the median household income, is gonna be paying another $1,000 a year in income taxes.
yes.
For
Sure.
up to a $300 savings on their property taxes.
Oh, no, that'll be gone by the time you pay that.
Okay, so everybody's paying more money.
Yes,
But net AV is, but net AV's going down, tax rate's going up, but in reality, the bill's going down.
The bill will go down, because it's gonna be 1%.
Right.
Well, what bill are you talking about?
Property tax.
Okay, if for the 1%, no, they won't, they'll still be capped.
So every homestead owner in the county that makes at least the median household income is gonna be paying $1,000 more dollars.
Keep in mind, we didn't design it.
I'm just, I know.
Bridget is water, this sounds like a tsunami.
It is, David.
It's gonna
Number
recede and
5.
it's gonna-
Number 5, TIF will not see a windfall as tax rates go up. I know a lot of people are concerned about that. There's one sentence in there that says DLGF will make it revenue neutral somehow, way, shape, or form. Maybe I added that, somehow, way, shape, or form. So it'll be important for us to review those, and we do that anyways with you, when we get there. And hopefully they have the form sooner rather than later, but I wouldn't expect that. But we've got pretty good understanding of where we need to go, okay?
So, will we be making a recommendation to DLGF?
For TIF neutralization,
For the TIF?
we always do the calculation and then give it to them and let them throw it back
Keep
at
our
us.
fingers crossed.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, 6, budget process will take more time. Now, you've heard about, we're gonna have to have additional hearings and things like that, but that doesn't take place until 2029. So you do not, Ann, need to adjust your calendar this year. But as always, before you push the button, we want to have, as many eyes on
I would
it.
say it'll start taking more in 2027, because we have to deal with all the income tax stuff.
Sure, yes, yeah, but I just mean specific to the budget calendar, which requires you to publish now the tax rate. So you'll be publishing a higher tax rate, and everybody will say, why is the tax rate going up? And you'll say, because the state made us. Okay, and again, that second page is gonna get fun. So, okay, that ends the now and in the future. So I'll pause, and do we need to go to Ann's number 5 before we go to number 6?
Okay, so preparing for budgets, council is reviewing budgets in August. Preparing for budgets, the heads of department need to know if you're doing COLAs, if you're doing performance raises, and the percentage. Now, keep in mind, everything we just discussed does not come into effect next year. So what we're budgeting, what we're talking about budgeting for next year does not include all the changes that you will be doing 2 years from now.
Other than the loss of the 16 million in property tax revenue.
The 4%
Yes, but
growth
we're-
quotient being
you're
more
gonna
like a
run
2
past
or
the
1.
homestead
Okay.
in July.
AV will go down this year in 26.
Yes,
Page
so
26.
in order to prepare the budgets, we need a final decision. The Midwest price index as of December 2024 was 3%. In the past, that's what you were using.
Not always.
Yes, in the last couple
I
of
need
years.
a lot more information before I can make this decision. I don't know, what's the increase in revenue gonna be, but off of our taxes, what are we looking income tax to be? I mean, I can't make a decision until I know what our income is like next year versus this year.
We cannot wait any longer. She is
What
already
I'm
behind
saying
the
is that, but
ball.
I'm still not gonna make a decision because I don't know. If we're gonna be down revenue next year, 'cause we're not gonna pass this, I'm not gonna make a decision on
You're gonna be down revenue.
how much. 16 million if we don't pass at 0.22 income tax.
Well,
That's
no, that's not your share.
That's not ours.
Okay, so you're gonna be down that. You're gonna be down level 6 revenue is gonna be about 1/4 of what it used to be. You know, so that's gonna go down pretty significantly. Interest income should hold. Loss, you know, so income taxes will be going, we got a supplemental lit, that was good. Income taxes should be going up for 26 because we're under the current scenario, okay? And so my recommendation on salary is do not go above 3%. Total of, because that's in isolation of the question I asked next is what is going to happen to your group insurance? Because I had one county say 30%'s coming. They've been really good lately, and now they're getting whacked. So what is your group insurance going to go up? Usually it falls over to the commissioners.
We should know.
Right, so I'm using 7%, but again, I've heard 30, I've heard some at 3 or 4, a nice reasonable number, okay? So each county is different, but then the third question that I always ask in budget preparation is, what are you doing with new people? In a lot of HR people have been talking, I mean, Monroe County put on a hiring chill. Everybody else is pretty much saying no new hires for 2026 until we kind of iron this out. And we've had chills here before, and that's what we called it. And I would kind of say that's probably where we're headed. And so in isolation, Eric, we can't just talk about the raise. We gotta talk about the group insurance. We gotta talk about the new employees
Which goes
also.
back to, we don't have those answers, so how am I supposed to make a determination?
I don't think you're gonna get the answers.
Well, I think the answer is submittal of the budgets could be done at, we've done this before in the past, at 3% or 2% or whatever. Get the 26 budget in, we can get it in our, that's what I already have a budget for 26 from Hancock County, the entire budget. And so we're plugging it into our flight plan, and we know we'll be able to give those answers, Eric. But we need something, for 2026, and maybe that would get us first round, keeping in mind, you give guidance on what do you have, we don't have individual departments do group insurance anymore, thank gosh.
Health.
Well, health.
Yeah, and you want to give guidance on what you wanna see as far as new hires. And then, Eric, we've got a document we can talk from.
Well, what Ann needs right now are numbers that she can submit to Gateway for DLGF.
No,
Well, not,
Numbers to build the budget and.
to build,
Build.
excuse me, I said Gateway, excuse me.
Yeah.
She needs numbers to build the budget, and then as we do our budget process in August, whatever, then we can tweak different line items up and down.
exactly what I'm
But
suggesting.
she needs numbers overall so that
Yeah.
she can work from that. So-
In the interest of moving this along, I will move to accept the 3% Midwest region rate for a 3% raise for employees. Total.
What about the, performance?
Zero.
I say zero that out this year.
Zero out on performance?
Yep. It's not working anyway.
Do you have
I
comment on that?
disagree very much with you.
No, I think it's working.
Yeah, most of them are putting a halt on it right now, working on the bigger number of 3%.
So if we do performance, then you've got to cut the COLA.
That's right. Well, you would if you have to, but we can do COLA and not do performance this year. I mean, we don't have to do 3%. My understanding is that this region on December, which is typically what we use to guide us on our COLA, if we have funds available, is the December of the previous year. And that was 3.0 for this, as I understand.
I'll second Nancy's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
It is
Is there-
imperative that she get moving along.
Oh, no, that's understandable. We have to do this today.
For clarity, it's 3% with no, that's COLA, with no performance enhancements.
Okay,
Yes.
is there discussion, more discussion? 3% with no performance? Is that what I'm
And bear in mind,
I think that's a huge mistake. We put so much effort and time into this. If we don't do performance this year, it's never gonna happen again. It's just.
thank you.
Well, I personally think we should be doing performance. It's.
I say it's
It's-
3% at the, manager's discretion. If that's how much the raise you have to give to people, 3%, you can give some people 1, some people 5. As long as it's 3% of your total budget, you're good to go.
Bingo.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
3% of total budget.
3% increase on their total payroll.
Payroll.
They can spend it however they want to in their department.
Not budget.
Yes, payroll.
And that would
In
work
the-
either way for the budgeting process, so.
That makes
We
budgeting
can
easy
make
too.
a firm decision on how they're spending it later, but we just need the number today.
3%, yeah.
And keep in mind, there are
We have-
matrices.
well, we have a
So the
motion.
number's 3%, let's just say it's 3%, we'll determine how that 3% is broken out at a future time, does that make sense?
Yep, they,
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Do we want to?
3% to, a total 3%, no matter, and then,
Okay.
So,
Let me offer an amendment.
okay,
With respect to those matrices, I would exempt the matrices.
which is sheriff, jail, and, probation.
Yeah, I mean, we have no choice with
I
respect.
mean, they have their own longevity and,
could you give me give us a clarification of what we?
3%, except for probation, jail, and sheriff's department.
That means that the sheriffs aren't getting raises.
Pardon?
Probation got 0 raises this year, for next year.
are they getting zeros?
They're getting 0.
Okay.
Do they have a
I
matrix?
think all state
Well-
employees,
And that's their matrix.
But-
But the county's making up
the county will.
they'll get that increase though.
Yes.
The lump sum increase that was
Get the
given last
increase,
year.
but it's the same as it was last year, so normally it goes up by the average judicial officer salary increase for the
does go up?
It would still go up according to the matrix, but it won't increase by any percentile. So if you're looking at like the cost of a COLA, which is what they normally get, they won't get next year.
Sheriff, are there people in your department that if we don't increase wages will not get a pay raise?
Yes.
That's,
So if they're in the matrix and they're in between years, service matrix, cause it's every 4 or 5 years depending. And if they're in the middle of that, they would get nothing.
Like go to the dentist, yeah.
I'm not doing that. I mean, it's
Well,
3% across the board. I mean,
And maybe
that's
I was,
big.
and maybe I misunderstood what Larry was saying, but I thought it was 3% and other company exempted you. But I thought it was exempted to people, they got 3% plus whatever the matrix people were getting. Cause not everybody's gonna get a matrix raise, cause it's based upon years of service.
Yes.
So,
Rank and.
yeah, it would
service.
be inappropriate from my perspective to only give matrix raises to a handful of people, and I'd be probably maybe 30%, would be my guesstimate, and not give any to the rest of them, just because they're in a matrix.
Everybody did get the percentage except probation before, is that not correct?
The what, I'm
Probation
sorry?
never got the county percentage, we just went by the scale.
There was a point where they got it, but it was 30 years ago, something like that.
Okay, so, but then we adjusted it last year, 2 years ago, bumped it up by like $5,000 per employee.
Yes. So they created their own matrix, and that matrix would increase by what they had the ability to choose to stick with the county increases or to go with the state
And they went
increases.
with the state,
And they went with the
okay.
state.
So is
So they would get the 3%.
So is the motion that the 3% across the board except for probation? Is that what we need to do?
Well, since they have zero, I think they should have the 3% too.
I'm sorry.
You're the maker of the motion.
Probation.
I withdraw mine, we'll start with this person.
Okay, so we've had lots of discussion, motion's withdrawn.
Okay.
So
I withdraw my second and make a new motion, and that is 3% increase for, 3%
Yes.
for the COLA or whatever, except for the matrices for the jail and sheriff's
No,
department.
they should get it, because it raises.
Right, because if we mess with that, it's gonna be a horrendous problem to correct it later on. And we're not, that's gonna be a small portion of the total payroll.
Okay, so, so what is the motion?
3% excluding the sheriff's department, jail and.
I'm still confused by
No, it's the
that.
opposite of that. The sheriff in jail, he will add 3% to his matrix.
So his overall payroll may actually go up
Okay,
more than
okay.
3%. It may be only 3.2 or something to include those people who are in a matrix.
Okay.
But then, even the matrices, everybody gets that 3%.
And granting it to the probation officers since they were given zero.
The
Oh, you're-
state sets those salaries. I don't,
No increase.
pardon me?
No increase.
No increase, but, yeah, I mean,
Okay, we need a clarification
Okay.
on your motion so we can proceed.
So the motion just needs to be 3% across the board.
except for probation,
Okay. So we're not-
Okay, say that again, Mike.
3%, except for probation.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Is that what we wanted to do? I thought probation, I think you know what probation includes.
I'll second it.
So probation voted to accept what the state did.
Okay,
They did,
So we're kind of,
they did
we're kind of
choose
tied to
that.
that.
I got you.
Now, I would be open to look at a stipend or something for them if.
We can look at that
If
later.
we have the money, we can do that later.
Yeah, we can do that later. Okay.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. And we had some more discussion.
My only discussion is, when you say 3% period, does that give the department head the ability to give one employee 1%?
This is only for discussion for budget purposes, not how it's.
This is just
distributed.
discussion to set up for our budget process. we will be deciding those kind of things later.
All right.
Yeah, this is really just for guidance for that.
It's just-
Yeah.
We're not locking
Yeah.
ourselves in.
For budget purposes.
Yeah.
Call
You wanna call for the vote?
Yes,
Yeah.
call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So we are 6-1 in favor of your motion.
And Ann will need to come up with that number, which is helpful in the budget. How
Yeah.
much money is going to
Probation number.
Yeah.
Probation is what the state takes.
So from our standpoint on insurance, then, on, health insurance, look at 5%. We think it'll be less than that, something like that, and then on our other insurance coverages, we're studying self-insuring on that right now. That probably is gonna net out at less than where we are at the moment. So put that in there for budget,
Yeah, now,
analysis.
now what we did also in another county is we set up a self-insurance reserve fund for property and liability.
Yeah.
And we actually funded that to be separate from, so that's something we want the council to consider as we go forward.
Okay.
Okay,
You could look at.
and then what about hiring Shill? Larry?
I'm sorry.
Hiring Shill.
Trees higher.
What is the direction on new hires?
That's what I'm
Do we have any pressing needs that we know about?
I don't know.
We're talking about hiring.
They have that.
HR might know.
I would just say, I do have a pressing need, on the jail side. And I don't know how far you want me to get into it, but specifically the courthouse situation we had recently has brought to light, obviously, our staffing shortage of being able to have 2 deputies on transports at all times. And so we're using overtime to try to fill that gap at this point, but that's not sustainable long term. So I am gonna ask for good staffing issues.
Any questions?
My thought would not be a mandated freeze at this point, and just pass it as an Indian.
Hold on a second. Aaron, could you help us as far as identifying any pressing needs that we're going to have for hiring?
The only, job description I've received so far for budgets for next year is one in soil and water, and it's a part-time employee, so there would not be benefits, but that's the only person that has turned in something so far.
Okay, I think that's small enough that we don't
Yep.
need to consider that.
Okay. So then, at this point, no new hires other than the 1 or 2 exceptions?
Yep.
Perfect. Can we move to the capital plan?
Please.
Okay, capital improvement plan, this is the document that I sent out before, and, has our items on it, okay? And that we came up with, and obviously, Adam and I need to know what we wanna do on number 1, or how we can provide you more information to either move forward or not. I believe, John, you're moving towards bids being received in November?
Right now, I'm waiting for direction. but
Okay,
we-
so you're in a pause.
We could still meet in October, November.
Okay, you're in a pause.
Definitely.
Okay, so, what can we do to help, or what else can we provide, on that, on number 1?
Do we have to raise our current income taxes?
We had discussed about using an allocable share of the current seated revenue to pay the debt service. So the answer is no. That was our plan going forward.
That was the plan, just that, could that still be the plan?
Oh, I believe so.
Okay, all right.
Subject to check, yes. I mean, unless John tells me our is going to cost 75 million,
No.
but we're,
You haven't gone up that much.
yeah.
I
I think,
believe John recently, didn't you jump, your estimate's around 42?
42 and a half is the estimate.
So I showed you 50, and so I believe the answer is, yes, we would make it fit within the 8 million seeded, means the seeded would get, we won't be using it on Ronald Reagan in the future. After this segment, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if a bond is issued on this project in this calendar year, say for a 20-year, they call 10 something, whatever.
I gave you the example.
Okay, that will go ahead on its own, no matter what happens in our changes in the next 2, 3, 4 years. That will just continue under the rules right now.
That is my understanding.
Except that we'll have that we'll have to be paying that, interest on capital back each year under the new restrictions, the 1.2% and all that stuff.
That's my financial understanding of now and moving it forward.
And where would you be on that?
So, legal.
Effectively the same, the details slightly different.
Yeah.
So now you can pledge income tax. We are also pledging TIF and then having a property tax backup.
Yeah, we remember all that.
Adds all the security. So that was how it would be outside of Senate Bill 1. The thing there is that you basically are binding future councils outside of Senate Bill 1 that's where you're gonna use that lit to pay debt service, assuming TIF was insufficient. Here we would essentially do the same thing, only we would just say any money the county wanted to appropriate to pay debt service in addition to TIF. TIF would still be pledged, but the lit would just be whatever revenue you wanted to use. With the idea being you would continue the lit rate in 2027 and 2028, and that would continue on. But it provides some flexibility. It avoids all of the issues with the expiration of the lit. And you get into the other issues of once the transition tries to happen in 27 and 28 with parity tests and every other bond covenant becomes nightmare. That's also avoided as well. But your plan of finance would not be any different.
So our plan that we discussed for several months now, we are on course, and David, that's why, you've got the property tax backup, we've got the TIF, we've got other revenue available to the county, we've got it pledged and secure. So I don't believe some of those, I think some of those, once the documents are addressed and put together and the third party group analyzes it and we get everything mapped out, I think we can proceed ahead. Otherwise, remember, I have a fiduciary duty as a license under Securities and Exchange Commission. Your money has to be treated as if it's my money, which I always have done and will do. And as a CPA, I've always done that. So you've got to decide, not me. So.
So what's the question?
Do you want us to pause, bring back more information? Do you want us to go ahead? Do you want us to stop entirely? That would be, in my opinion, the three options.
Pause discussion?
This is pausing Ronald Reagan, is that correct?
Yes. This would be from, County Road 750 north to County Road 1000 north. It'd be 2.5 mile, section addition to the Ronald Reagan. By getting it up to 1000, and we also have a project in early stages, I think there may be some right-of-way acquisition already going on 1000 north, which would then be able to tie that north end of the Ronald Reagan into over west on State Road 267. So there would be I would think it would be much more attractive for a lot of the traffic at this point would move over to that because they could go on up. And then the enhancement, of 1,000, so.
Do we know what Whitestown or Boone County is gonna do?
I had a discussion about 3 weeks ago for the first time in a long time with Whitestown and Zionsville, because everything in Boone County goes through one or both of those townships, they kind of hopscotch up through there. There is renewed interest, towns have to agree, obviously, I mean, because it does switch back and forth, one can't do it without the other. And so they're in conversations now about sewer service and things like that in that area, but there is some interest. How quickly they're gonna pull something together, I have no idea. But like Larry mentioned, we're gonna improve 1,000 to get traffic over to 267 when we get up to that point. That actually goes to a letting next July 26th. But that's hopefully an interim measure till it goes on up through Boone County to where they decide to take it. They're also talking about rerouting the north end, not to 267, but over to closer to Whitestown, but that's neither here nor there for as far as we're concerned. I mean, as long as it ends up on 65 someplace, it's kind of the ultimate goal.
But as you said, John, if they change the alignment, then they have to have a new,
They'll have to redo their environmental
Environmental study,
documents.
right.
It'll add some time to the process on their end.
So it'll be there now,
For
right?
Boone
That's all right.
County's area, but not for us.
Right.
Because
Right.
we own all of the right of way
Correct.
to the Boone County line now.
Correct.
And so we're set.
Right, and we will have an outlet there on 1,000 to get traffic off the Parkway.
I think we need to move forward with it. If we don't do it now, it just gets more expensive, and we don't do
Right.
it now, it'll be off a year, and it'll just be 10% more than it is right now.
but do they answer your question, Eric? Do we have to raise?
We have enough, right now, we'd be at 0.85 with our county budget. They're saying this is like 0.03-ish to pay for this.
On top of that,
On top of
probably,
that,
yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can run those
It's not,
numbers.
as part of the
But-
whole budget, it's not a big
Okay.
number, so.
But again, if we could, assume it's built in within the current edit of
Right.
8 million,
Yeah.
then it would not go up.
Right.
But I don't, I wanna give you all answers. And keep in mind, we are also locking up the TIF district that we put in place
And the
10
reason why I'm
years
saying
ago.
that is, we used to be able to build on rating for like 7 million a mile, and this is, what, 15? Or not, yeah, 15 million a mile.
I have a question, not a suggestion, but a question. The prohibition of spending over 25%, that goes away when?
Prohibition on pledging lead
2 years.
in 2 years. So the structure that I described on the spending plan being the same avoids that whole issue.
So I'm.
And again, either way, even if we take our current bond and our future bond, we're more like, 15% or something. So we're way under.
I agree with Eric about continuing this project we started when my dad was on the council, 30-ish years ago. So it's time.
Yeah, cost is only gonna go up, as Eric is.
We're not at a good stopping point right now. We need to
No,
get to
not.
it.
Right.
So we have two council people wanting it to proceed now. And
I think that's financially prudent.
I'd make a motion from the council standpoint that we would agree to the bonding and the funding of the Parkway with edit. If the commissioners want to continue it, we can't say yes or no to do it, but we can say yes, we will finance it, so that's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay.
My motion is to finance the Parkway through a bond issuance.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Whoops, second, Mr. Hessen. Discussion further?
I just wanna say, I agree with Eric, I hate to lose the money and time we've already spent on that. Plus, if we put it off, the horses are soon to go.
And I would also add, at least in my opinion, that if we extend that up and make some connection up there, that makes that TIF property more valuable.
Yes, yes, it does.
It's just getting more economic.
That's correct. Okay,
So Greg, if we move forward with the Reagan and sort of what you've explained this morning, now let's do another $120 million capital project on in the next 5 years.
Okay, well, I did that, and, you know, cause that's your, so roundabouts are number 2. We're addressing that, and remember, we're going to have a reimbursement resolution for each one. We're gonna have, hopefully, the TIFs reimburse us over time, and we were talking about using food and beverage for those for number 2, okay? And again, that schematic design, I don't know any update on roundabout number 1. We took 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4's not fully funded. What about 1 and 2 starting from the north?
With that funding, we don't have commitments from the developers yet on those. They're in preliminary design stages.
So
With
we,
2 being the priority over 1 and 2.
John?
Okay, so 2 will
We do have
cut.
a verbal commitment from one developer.
We do, just not anything number-wise.
So what is your timeline for 1, 2, 3? Yes.
We could start the first one probably next winter, early 26.
This winter or next winter?
Early 26.
Okay.
January.
Okay, that'd be
We
fine.
we could start January 26.
Okay, so we've got time, and we'll be working out those details as we go forward. Okay, now go back to David's question. So number 3,
Did you, when you're about on the roundabouts, did you say the total funding is coming for food and beverage?
no, I'm sorry. What we said was that, for 1, 2, and 3, we're hoping that we'll be taking that out of food and beverage. We talked about food and beverage at first.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You know, and then reimbursing
Oh,
it
reimbursing, okay.
from TIF as the TIF comes in. And remember, we even have TIF in the bank in some of these. But again, you know, that was the schematic. We weren't hurrying that schematic design. We were just conceptually doing it because we knew a lot's gotta take place before we even do 1, 2, 3, 4's coming. Okay, now, to the,
Let's call for the question on that number 1.
oh, okay, sorry.
We have a call for the question. All of those in favor signify saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
It's up to you guys now.
Okay.
The 3 of us are.
Eric, were you for?
Yeah.
For? Yes, okay. It passes 6 to 1. Mr. Wyatt.
Hey,
Okay, so.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure that we were, we were that.
So you can go ahead.
So number 3 is the big question that, Mr. Wyatt asked. And so if you go to document number 13, we've kind of showed you this before. This is where we stand on the estimated, did you wanna bring Gene up to date on Ron Worthington? Bob, sorry, Gene Jones.
No, we're okay. Yeah, he's
Bob, okay. So on
Raise taxes in Middle Township.
document number 13, document number 13, what we show you is that our tax rate has dropped to 0.0175 given the highway garage bonds. We obviously were not going to lit for this, so we were suggesting that property taxes would have to pay this project. As you can see down at the bottom, I said Purdue Justice Campus of $100 million. The estimated annual debt payments would be $8 million, or about 5 pennies on the property tax rate. I think what you heard is we're going to $3, so we have a lot of counties saying, wow, you know, if we wait, the projects go up. If we do it now, we are able to enter into this. And we won't even get into some of the SB1 impacts on whether the 5 pennies happens to be a line.
100 million's a line.
Yeah, the 100 million's a line, so we would have to put this out, go ahead, explain.
It'd be subject to referendum.
We're not
Correct.
anywhere closer to having a decision made on this than we were last time we met, so I don't think it's worth really talking about right now.
Well, I think it is, because you gotta be looking at what you're gonna be planning for the future, what your income taxes are.
Because you
for now. We don't know if that'll be in the future.
No, well, once we put it in as property tax, it would be.
But I was just trying to get the overview from Greg on numbers.
Yeah. Does this help you, David, or?
A little bit.
Okay.
Is that 5% based on the?
5
current-
pennies?
5%, yeah, based on the current assessed value or the new dropped assessed value?
No, current, Nancy. Yeah. That's why.
It would
you-
be much higher with the.
Not much higher, but it will, that's why we put in this, this column, assessed value now. I'll be able to project that as we go forward. But the answer was, I knew we weren't moving ahead on this, Dad, so I just wanted to give you a ballpark.
Clarification.
But somebody will be designing it, maybe it's already.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Eventually, it's not underway yet, but I don't think we can forget about it, is where I'm coming from. We've gotta keep that on our plate.
Okay. And as you can see also here, this addresses the fairgrounds number 4. We have that coming off. And again, we could easily pay that early or whatever, but I really, I've always said the schematic design was put, when the fairgrounds starts to come off, before it comes off, we are ready to go with the fairgrounds expansion that you put down as number 4. And, that theater will be coming, that's 27 comes off. We gotta have our stuff together next year. Okay, to make it simultaneous, so.
As Dave and Tim Wicker presented to the commissioners, those of us, and since I'm on the fair board, they are really interested in doing the design, getting the design, which is $800,000 to $1 million. Getting that part done, I think that makes a lot of sense. And whether we can fund, and they know, Dave, we told them, it depends on how much money is there, but I think the design is important to proceed.
And I think I attended that meeting, and it was pretty reasonable within our level that we set here.
Well, I think 800,000, somewhere in that neighborhood for the design.
Yeah.
Or the overall projected cost.
An overall comment from me, I think all of the projects that we've identified in our capital improvements program are either really strongly needed right now, or they're very close, because as our population continues to grow, we need to have, to me, and this is the engineer coming out in me, you need to have these projects designed, have them ready to go, so because you don't know what's gonna happen. Well, we don't know what's gonna happen eventually with the legislature, but we also don't know what's gonna happen in the markets, in the economics. That the economics was a major factor for us with how we came out so well on the jail. The other factor was that we decided, when the sky was falling there in 2019, we went ahead and had that ready to go to bid, because when the sky is falling from a contracting standpoint, the bids go way down. It was exactly what happened to us with the jail. So we need to have, so obviously speaking for myself, we need to have these things ready, or very close to ready, because you don't know what's gonna happen.
And Larry, here's how I can be any more in agreement with you. The 5X smart economic smart growth, I call it. Okay, we've gotta have our 5.6 billion AGI, adjusted gross income, continue to grow in the future to benefit everyone in the county. We've had strong growth in that. What that means is you gotta live in Hendricks County, so we have to have housing. You have to have roads, so we have to have a way to get in and out and move around. You have to have amenities. I love the fairgrounds and the parks. That will make people wanna hopefully live here. Remember, that's what's going to drive the economic engine of Hendricks County now and for the next 10 years. No matter what everybody throws at us. Unless they cap somehow the LIT on growth per year. Remember, I've always told you that could come at some point in time, but I'm hoping not. But the growing not the 16 billion or the 15 billion AV anymore, it's building the 5.6 billion of income. Utmost important, and we've got to, every time we have an abatement application or anything, jobs and what's being paid is utmost important. So I'll rest at that.
And Greg, to that 5.6 billion are residents of this county,
Yes.
not those who come and work and go to bed in some other county.
No, I don't believe so. Okay, that's all I have
Parks,
at this
is that,
point.
is that for the building they're designing out, the Gibbs? at
Pardon?
5 million?
Commissioners?
It is.
On parks, I'm not, Brian, he's not in here. John, you probably don't know.
What was the question, I'm sorry?
The parks number there in year 2026, $5 million.
It is, Danny.
Is that for the
It is.
remodel and or expansion, whatever, of the
Yes.
old Gibbs house becoming the parks?
Yes.
Offices and so on, okay. Right. And I can't speak for Bob or Brad, but I think we're in agreement on kind of the words that were said, design, ready to go on all of these projects that are outlined on this capital plan. We may not be ready to go, but we need to be ready to go.
Is there other commissioner business?
None, we don't have any, thank you.
Do we have other council business? For the council, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Got it, second, all those in favor? Oh, yes, that's all in favor.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
We're adjourned.
See you, Doug.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I hope this was helpful to have this.
Very helpful, Captain.